My guest is Emma Hayes, U.S. Women's National Head Coach. She is the legendary coach of Chelsea FC women's team, where she won 16 trophies. She's author of the book, A Completely Different Game, My Leadership Playbook. Emma, thanks so much for joining me on Sports Business Radio. How are you?
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm good today.
Excellent. You're joining me from London. I love London, so that's great. But I want to start with the remarkable job that you did with the U.S. Women's National Team to win gold in Paris. You did this in roughly 2 months. It was your 10th match, and you're hanging gold around your neck. I don't know that I've seen a more remarkable coaching job in that brief of a time. How did you do this? How did you bring the team together that quickly?
Well, I mean, the first thing is you have to have a good enough team to begin with. And the team that I brought with me, we're only as good as the talent that's in front of us. So the first thing is the quality of the players that really stood out to me. But beyond that and the obvious coachability within the team, I just got such a sense they were so open to the direction that I was taking them in, and that made, I think, everything seem so much easier. There was, somebody put it to me that we didn't have time to trust each other. We just had to. And because of that, we fully immersed ourselves in it. We gave it so much of ourselves. We were so vulnerable to the process. And I thought that was the key reason why we were successful this summer.
You seem to build a human personal connection with your players more so than many coaches. And again, you did it very quickly. I think anyone listening to this, whether you're a CEO or you're a coach, you're looking to build that human connection. What's the secret, Emma?
Well, I think the secret is remembering that they're humans first. And the second part to that is yes, they play sport in my case, but they're human beings. And most importantly, each and every one of them's different. So how can I get the best out of their individual selves while hold them accountable to most of the team non-negotiables? And one of the big things I always say to people is when you're in a team, everybody wants the same thing. Everybody wants to win. But unlocking the potential in each and every one requires sometimes a different skill set, sometimes a different person to bring something out. But for me, getting to know the person, getting to know why they do what they do, I think makes it so much easier, and something that we spent a lot of time in the preparation for the Olympics, getting to know who they were and why they do what they do.
So is this something where you're pulling individual players aside and you're having conversations with them? Are your assistants doing this? How are you kind of doing this fact finding to find out how can I best resonate with my players?
Well, first of all, I have my own coach that works with me throughout this process, and we'll devise different opportunities through classroom sessions. Sometimes we'll be doing sessions in and around getting people to understand not just why they do what they do, who they are when they're in the zone and they're at their very best, what they look like when they're not, what are the physical manifestations of that, and what help do they need when they get into that state. So we would go through many different exercises, sometimes lots of drawing, sometimes the building of their belief walls, like the things that got them to this point. Sometimes we would do things where they had to share some of the most vulnerable things for them in front of the rest of the group. But doing stuff like that with my coach, I think really set me up to create a performance culture where we could develop the mental fitness that's required in these biggest tournaments. And I'm very much an advocate of developing and building up that muscle to prepare the players. And most importantly, like, I think when you're a leader in my position, one of the things I kept saying to the team is don't worry about the press. I'll deal with the press. I'll absorb the pressure externally, but internally, I want us to commit to the process in the entirety, knowing that no matter what happens, I will put my body in the way in this Olympics, and you have my full trust to be able to deliver those performances without the repercussions and worry externally. And I think that took a lot of pressure off of the players, and one that, I think you do have to do as a leader.
I've heard you talk about leading with empathy too, and that seems to be a big part of your coaching strategies with your players.
Yeah, I don't know if it's, sometimes I think it's because I'm a middle child and I always had to get myself between my two sisters. I do think that did play a part, but I often, in many, many situations, I'll always say, try and put yourself in somebody else's shoes first, one. And two, while we don't want certain emotional contagion to take place in teams, I don't know whether it's negative body language, whether it's people sighing or huffing about or looking disinterested. I always challenge both myself and others to say, don't read into those things. Make sure you get underneath that person and understand them a little bit more. Because I think so often we're so quick to judge all the little things that happen with people, and something I'm always avoid. And the empathy piece is, listen, most, especially at my level, they've put their whole life into what they're doing. They care about it so deeply. Sometimes that creates a paralysis in performance. And as I said, my job is to teach people that you weren't born a football player. You were born a female, but we've got to keep developing the skills so that you can produce everything you need to in and around being a soccer player at the highest level. And something definitely I feel like I've worked a lot on as a coach.
So, what are some of those skills for today's modern global women's soccer player? What are some of the skills? I've heard you talk about coachability. Obviously, you just talked about relating to the human. What are some of the other things that go into if you're going to be a champion at this level as a women's soccer player today on the global stage? What goes into that?
I think two are the most important. The first is growth mindset. The importance of recognizing whatever got you to this point that won't necessarily get you to the next one. Got to have a constant growth mindset in and around performance. And the second is resilience, and developing your resiliency in no matter what it looks like. So, in my business, often, when you're playing a game every week, you get fired on a Friday and rehired again on a Monday. So how are you coping with all of that, knowing that sometimes you're working all week at something and at the end you're expecting there to be a game. Sometimes there isn't a game for some of them because they might be on the bench, or what happens when there's a game and it hasn't gone as well as you wanted it to? Like, how are you bouncing back, and what skills are you developing to make sure that you can not be too hard on yourself? One of the things I see an awful lot of the time with a lot of women that I coach, that they're always being hard on themselves, or they're always having to deal with imposter syndromes. And for me, developing really real simplicity and most importantly, do sessions off the field in developing those things and teaching them to understand the difference between growth and fixed mindsets. And we're all capable of being in both of them, but how to keep challenging yourself to be in growth. And like I said, the bounce back ability. You have to have it all the time, and keep reminding everyone it's just no single straight line to the top. It's full of many curves, and accept that and try where possible. Easier for me to say now, have a lot of joy in what you're doing, because we all know when you have fun doing something and they've got that sense of freedom with it, that's usually when we all find our best.
Great advice. Emma, I'm interested in something that you recently launched, the WNT way. And it seems like it's a blueprint for the future of U.S. women's national team. Again, a lot of people think short term and here in the now, you look like you're thinking far into the future with this WNT way. Can you explain what this consists of?
Yeah, I mean, I can't do things where I don't commit to like both, the present and the future. I think I've always been a builder of things, and it's never going to be any different here. But I've always experienced the sport through an entirely male lens. And I want to change that. I want to reshape that in many ways. So if you think about everything from the coach education I've been exposed to and any, coach of the women's game to anything from the performance, the medical insights, the technical insights, they've all come from a male bias or a male lens, whether that's from the men's game or not. So I'm really committed to create a world where the female lens is at the heart of everything we do. And in order to architect that blueprint, we have to ensure we create a strategy that first and foremost is for the WNT and for the YNT. But for me, it goes beyond that. I want to make sure we keep scores of teenage girls in the game. I don't want them dropping out at 13 and 14 because we've either got coaches that don't know how to deal with puberty for females to the support mechanisms we need to develop in and around that, just as understanding that women will have a different set of responsibilities in life. Sometimes, whether that's having a child, whether that's being a carer, and we might want to have a role in coaching or in our sport, but we might have to find different ways to be able to support women to do that. And so I want to shine a light on the system, and hopefully in years to come I can look at the next Emma Hayes who's going through a coach education system for the women's game designed by those within the women's game, and that players, whether they're being rehabbed from an ACL injury, that we're not basing that on how you recover a male athlete, but recognise the physiological differences, whether that's our Q angle, whether that's our hormones, whatever that be, to designing technical and tactical systems that are relatable to our game. That for me is the gold standard. And I think the US has a wonderful opportunity to lead the way for the whole global game when it comes to the female lens, and something I'm extremely passionate about.
I love your
Beyond
holistic
winning,
approach.
it goes beyond winning. This is
Yeah.
winning for me.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. And it's a holistic approach and it seems to fit with everything that you've done previous. You're now bringing it to US women's national team and it's a sustainable long-term approach, not just a here and a now. Are there other coaches in other sports who have influenced you or who you look at and go, I like what they're doing over here? I've had a lot of coaches on this show and they pay attention to other coaches and they seem to either observe them or go to practice or just kind of borrow some of the things from other coaches. Is there anyone out there that you pay attention to?
Yeah, lots, I'd say. I mean, I'm a big fan of Dawn Staley and Carol Lawson at Duke to Cheryl Reeves at the Minnesota Lynx, as a starting point. I'd say Greg Popovich, someone I've hugely admired, along with Steve Kerr and his leadership. Um, to name a few. You can't fail to ignore the qualities of Bill Belichick over the years. American sports has had a huge part on who I am. Anson Dorrance, an unbelievable winning coach. Tomorrow, I'm speaking with a mental skills coach from the All Blacks New Zealand team, an unbelievable guy who I've built a relationship with, and I've so many different mentorships and connections with coaches across the world, whether it be in any Australian sport to rugby to cricket to basketball. I'm learning all the time, and right now I'd say my biggest learning within the US landscape. I'm doing stuff with Jenny who is the assistant coach with Greg at the Pacers. What a wonderful woman she is. And yeah, just every city I go to, I plan on making sure I try to connect with whomever, the most interesting, coaches are in that town, because it's one of the things I love most about being in this job is I really get the chance to build relationships with those at the highest end of sport and or business, because it's not just sport for me. I enjoy many other things. So I love USA. I've made no secret of that.
No, you have not. And it's been great to you, and you've been great to the U.S. Let's talk about the business end of all of this for a minute. When I think of the U.S. women's national team for the last 25 years, I mean, they have really led the way in so many things and paved the way for women's sports, equal pay, triple espresso at the Olympics. I mean, there's so much marketability. I love your partnership with VW. Um, how much of that do you pay attention to? You said you're interested in kind of the business aspect of all of this. How much of that are you paying attention to in the narrative of all of that?
Oh, massively. I'll often say to people, the last World Cup was worth 571 million in revenue. What will the next one be? And what will it be in 2031 if we manage to host it in the US? The realities are that when we talk about business and we talk about where there's likely to be the most growth, it's for sure in women's sport. And if you see the cost of a franchise in San Diego a few years ago being a couple million, and teams like Angel being sold off for a couple of hundred of million, you see how quickly and transformational the sport is becoming as a viable business. And I think it is important on two fronts to, of course, take the learnings from many, many other sports. But I think it's really important that women's sports carve their own way, their own path, their own identity, whether that's to the type of partners we attract to our sports, ideally that are female focused, to creating experiences on our game day. They don't have to be the same as the men's programs. They have to be what work for us. And I look at the WNBA as such I don't know, an inspiring place where they're leading the way on so many fronts. And I think for us in the soccer world, we've got great investors. Someone like Michelle Kang's done a tremendous job in how she's investing. And I think that the future is, without question, women's sports. To what extent it will look like in the next 5 years, I'm sure we will move the marker once again, because you can't just go from, a position of, I keep saying this to people all the time, our sport in soccer was banned for 75 years. 75 years we have to make up in how we position ourselves, how we market ourselves, how we develop that equity, which I still think we're having to work on. Probably much better in the US, not probably, better in the US than it is almost anywhere else globally, but still got a lot of work to do to change fundamentally the systems that have been designed for male sports. So a lot of work to do, but I know for sure I have the ambition and the appetite to keep challenging that. And I hope that we keep producing teams, not just at the international level, it's the domestic level that's important. Our league is important, that, our fans can be proud of.
Just a couple minutes left. I want to ask you about balancing motherhood and being an elite soccer coach. You've got your son, Harry. You seem to do it so well. You seem to bring him on the road, and you're present in his life. It's not always easy for someone with your job to do that. How do you do it?
Well, I've got a great family, so that really helps. That they've always given me the confidence to be able to do it. And two, I think the acknowledgement that I'd be nothing without that tribe of people around me, that it takes a village, whether that's really empathetic colleagues to understand when I might need, I don't know, an hour in between schedules to give him time. To a son that sometimes it can be really difficult for him because he wants the routines and that I think any 6-year-old wants, but at the same time he also wants the opportunities to travel. And what I have learned is, and I hope this gives, if anything, you know, people a little bit of solace when I say this. What I've learned in life is that a third of the time is pretty good, and on top of it, a third of it's okay, and a third of it's pretty crappy. And the reality is that I probably battle that much like every other person does every month. Um, and know that as long as I keep thinking about, okay, how can I keep improving it for the next time, then and one of the big things was that every trip that he comes on, one of my own development goals is to make meaningful experiences with Harry. So I make sure every city we go to with the team, I either go a couple of days early or stay a couple of days late. So I get to go and take him places. So it doesn't feel like it's work for him. And that's what I've learned about parenting in this position is that we spend enough time having parent guilt. And I've sort of got to that point where I'm like, no, you know what? I'm not going to feel that because I love my job and I love having a career and that's important. But I can do both things, but I have to be well organized to make sure that I get all of the right things in at the right time so that I can try to keep all of them at a level that's required. But beyond him and the US Women's National Team, I'd say, like most humans, is quite difficult to invest in much more beyond that. But I'm living my dream. I get to take my son around USA, coaching the team I've spent my whole life dreaming about doing, and get to experience the country with him. I try to focus on the really, really good things with it. And when the challenging things come up, I just make sure I confront them and learn from it. And where I get it wrong, try to do better next time.
Like we all do. I love
Yeah.
seeing a little glimpse of your life on your Instagram at Emma Hayes One. Every once in a while, you let us see a little glimpse of your life. What's your strategy with social media? Is it something that you just pull out your phone and say, hey, I'm going to post something? Or do you think about it in advance? Do you have people who are helping you with that?
Oh, none of those things. No, I don't have anyone controlling any of that. It comes out of my phone usually close to one of the camps, and if I can just see, I love interacting with the fans. Like that's the thing for me that I've always enjoyed about my job. Beyond being with the players, I love being with the fans, and I feel like I'm so excited to come to so many new cities that I have to announce it every time, even if it's just to say hi, is really uncomplicated. My 16-year-old niece always says to me, she's like, Emmy, there's one thing that's really good about your social media is it's consistently dull. And I said, no, listen, I don't know how to do, I just about learned how to do a reel and a story, but keeping that up consistently, that's just far too much effort for me. So if I do it every 6 weeks, then I can commit to it for that 10 days and then I can just switch it off again. That's my strategy. Like have it occasionally and I don't use it in between.
I love it. All right, last question. I want to give you a chance to promote your appearance at the She Believes Summit coming up April 4th in Los Angeles. You, Jessica Berman, the commissioner of the NWSL, Billie Jean King. There's going to be so many great women in the room in Los Angeles. I know you're excited to appear at this and to see a lot of the people in attendance.
Well, I mean, look at the names you're reeling off, and like one of our goals is to create a landscape through something like She Believes Summit where you can absolutely see it, no matter who you are and what you want to be, whether you want to be a leader of an organization, to a head coach, to a superb athlete, to a broadcaster. I think you get the chance to experience women that are across the sport in many different guises, all together in one place, not only sharing insights, but driving a community and a network that I know has always been so helpful for me in my career, and one where, I mean, listen, I get to go and meet Billie Jean King for the day, and I'm certainly in awe of her. So it'll be great on that end, but also just to listen to anybody from the likes of Jessica Berman. Um, I know Julie Foudy will be there, Brandy Chastain will be there. Like, there's a cast of characters, and it's a great opportunity to mingle with like-minded people. And sometimes I always say to people, sometimes we don't know what we want to do in life, but it might help you to know what you don't want to do. And come along, not only because it's a great summit, but hopefully you get to come out and watch our incredible team play against Brazil in the remake of the Olympic gold medal final.
And that's on April 5th at SoFi Stadium for those out there who want to attend that match. Emma Hayes, U.S. women's national team head coach. Emma, seriously, you are such an inspiration on and off the field. I just love what you do to this world and how you make it a better place, and keep growing the game and keep doing what you're doing. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Listen, my glass is half full and I'll always live like that. So thanks for having me. And as always, I love this job I do. So I'm so grateful every day.
Thank you. You're listening to Sports Business Radio.